Oh, this was a right industrial wee town because there was the crisp factory and the hosiery and the sweetie work. In fact, there was a sweetie work up South Street.
Two.
And there was the wire mill, the cotton mill, and the paper mill. Miss Agnes Robertson went to Fisher School when I was 5. I left school when I was 14. And my name was down in the paper mill before I ever left the school. Because you only could get a job when somebody left to get married. So I was 16 before I got a job in the high mill. In Inverness paper.
Most youngsters, when they left the schools, they went to one of the mills to get a start. And the paper mill got such a good name, that's what I tried first.
So let's begin at the beginning. What age were you when you started there?
I was 15.
How did you get the job? Can you remember?
Well, I had an old uncle that stayed in Musselburgh that actually got me the job when I left school. And that's where I went.
Right. Did he work at the mill himself?
Yes, he did.
He was born in 1909 and his 14th birthday was in October, and he left school at 13 and he started 14 in October, so that would be 1923, and he worked there all his life.
So when did you start at the mill?
1955.
And what age were you then?
About 16. I had worked in a photographer's office first and I hated it. All my pals had worked in the mill, so I said, I'm going to the mill. So I got an afternoon off one day and I went to the mill and I asked if I could get a job there. And they said yes. So I started off there.
Well, I joined the paper mill in 1956, May of 1956. And I was employed as a cutter boy. That's when you started off in the mill.
I think it was early 1970s, maybe 73 or 74. I left school and it was my friend who said he could possibly get me a job in an office, which I was quite surprised to begin with because having no qualifications, what was it going to be? I went for the interview and I got it, so I started off as working in the mailroom as an office junior. I never knew Brunton's wire mill existed. I knew it was in Musselburgh, but that was about it. When I got in, it was older than what I thought it was going to be. Tiles and big empty corridors.
So I started in the paper mill in 61.
And you were, what age did you say, sorry, 15?
15.
15. Can you remember your impression when you first arrived at the mill on your first day?
A bit daunting, really, because there was a place at the bottom of the hill where you had to clock in a card,
right,
and walk away up the hill, and then there was the big offices on the left and the mill. So it was quite a big area, quite a big employer. At 15, it was a bit scary.
And I believe I'd be 15, so it'd be 1956. 1956, early 57.
And was that straight from school?
No, I went to the wire mill first.
All right. So what age did you leave school?
15.
15.
And I was only in the wire mill for about 6-7 weeks because all my pals worked in the paper mill.
And did they get you a job there?
I went myself and applied. I got one actually. I spoke to one of the gaffers there.
Left the school at 1960 and went straight there.
What age were you?
15. I was wanting to be a hairdresser, and my sister-in-law, the brother next to me, was going with Jeanette, and Jeanette comes in and she starts talking about the paper mill and how great it is and what a great place to work, and the wages were a lot higher than the cotton mill or the wire mill, or double the wages I would be getting as a hairdresser. So there was no doubt about it. The crossover penny was bought and my wee message bag was put in my hand, and off I went to the paper mill, and that was the start of my career in the paper mill till I got married.
Can you remember your first day? What was your impression as you walked on?
Terrified.
Really?
Yeah, you went into the office, the big office, and everybody was sitting very quiet, and somebody came, took us all as a group over to the mill, and it was huge. And the smell. Esparto grass was boiled for to make the paper, and the smell, I thought, never going to live here, no.
Really?
Couldn't think anything, the smell was horrendous.
So when you first started, what was your role there?
Well, everybody that started worked with two men who used to wrap the paper in big tar wrappers. And then when that was wrapped, they used to put it on the pallet. So the youngsters starting then had to put the labels on, and they had to be precise.
The paper that was gone sometimes went to Tatler, Reader's Digest, and everything had to be perfect. And if your label was a wee bit squinty, the parcel got pulled off, got opened up, and they reparcelled it, and you had to put new labels on. I
was employed as a cutter boy. That's when you started off in the mill. Whereas when the reels were on the machine and cut different sizes, you took all the shavings away, put them in a barra, build them up to the pulper, so it would go through the system again. And that was your job when you started at 15.
My job was to take the paper shavings from underneath the cutter, put it into a bag and carry it up to the pulper to get repulped again.
Sounds could be quite dangerous, maybe?
It was.
Yeah.
But the health and safety was there. The reel of paper was put up towards the cutters, or the nice one. The shavings came down underneath, and my job was either to go underneath and pull the shavings away, or get a big stick in, and it was cut into squares. Then they were piled up, put into pallets, and taken up the stair to what they called the saw.
Which was the finishing house, the saw, S-A-L-L-E, that was what it was called, the saw. But it was the finishing house. And there was about 30 women working, overhauling the paper.
So is that getting it ready, packed up for
getting
dispatch?
Ready, overhauling it, and making sure taking out any torn sheets, blemish sheets. Again, that was all sent back to the pulper again once it was all sorted out. That's what the girls done.
When I went in, the man was Mr. Forsyth, and he was a lovely wee foreman. And he introduced me to some of the girls in it, and I knew some of the girls because, as I said, some of my pals that went to dancing with and everything, they were all working in the mill, and that's why I wanted to go to the mill, and because it was better money as well. So first of all, they showed me what they called the saw, massive big room. It was tables all along and windows all round, and tables all the way round, and there was girls standing at all different bits, and they had like what I would class as boxes that they put piles of paper on. It could be from small to large to even 6 feet sizes of paper. And what they did was they put a rubber on their finger, on the middle finger, and they swiped the papers off the pile that they had on into these what we call boxes, and you collated them up and put them straight. And you had to watch for every sheet of paper that you took off, that it was not marked, no creases, no tears, anything. Anything that was damaged, you threw it aside, and you had like a cage thing that you put them in. All the waste went in that, and then it went way back down to where they made all the paper.
But when the box was filled up, usually the person that worked beside you gave you a hand to put it down onto like a pallet, and then you had to sit and fan it up and look through it and then count it and then put it onto another piece, and then from there it went up the stair. So there was 2 men worked up the stair, and they stood either side of a table, and they packed the paper, and they were very quick at doing it. It was a long hall, the mill itself, and up the top was usually really big bits of paper. Down the bit where I was shorter paper, and then sometimes it was actually we called it boards, cardboard, sorry, and you had to do it a different way. You had to sort of flick it and throw it in, opposed to grabbing the paper. When you got into it, you did it quick, and then, as I say, you had to count it, and then the supervisor came round and she checked before it went up the stair.
And did you work with the same people all the time?
Yes, normally, yeah. There was a group of us, that we all knew each other.
It depended on the size of the sheet of the paper. It could have been the size of this tabletop.
Okay.
Or bigger. It could be the size of a double bed. You had a rubber tubing on your finger. So that flicked the paper up, you put it in that hand, and you travelled it along so that you could see right over the whole of the sheet. If there was a splice, we called them, where they joined, that got taken out. If you were caught with a splice, it was going to come off your wages. They were looking for a way to claw back some money off us.
Yeah.
And it was hard work. It was. We had, they folded it and then folded it again, and you had a girl stood there and lifted it and threw it up to you, and you had to walk with this ream of paper, I would say, throw it on your bench, flatten it out, and you stood the whole day, all day.
After you'd finished in the cutting, what was the next thing after that?
The brock machine, we actually called it, where all the cuttings were taken up here to this machine and put through what we called a pulper. It ground the paper down into pulp, where the big tin barrows would fill this out of this machine, and that was taken away the beaters. Well, oblong shaped sort of tubs, big long things, and with a big roller in the middle. They put in the size and the bleach and the colour into this to all get mixed through. Size is a sort of glue. When the beaters beat the pulp enough, that was all run down into the paper machine itself, into what was called the wire. It was like a big wire mesh, and it came down just like porridge, and it was all strained like through this wire, and it was left just like a sheet of paper, but thick, and it gradually had to be drained through the wires, and then it was put through rollers and squeezed flat, and then it was put into calendars. Went through the calendars, it was glazed.
What kind of a material were they using to begin with in their paper?
Spartograss.
Spartograss.
You know, you've seen brooms made of it, that hard grassy stuff, It used to come from abroad, I don't know where, but it used to come in wagon loads from the station.
And it had to be treated?
There was what we called the grass sheds, that was up in the high mill. And I had to be treated up there. They had big tanks and all for treating it.
Well, if you could just tell me to begin with, when you started working in the net factory?
I was 15-year-old. That was when. Well, I was 61 yesterday.
And how did you come to
Well,
apply there?
in these days you had to keep going back and forward to the factory. So I got the job there, and it was from 7:30 in the morning till 5:15 at night.
And what was your first job there?
Filling needles for the other girls to work on the nets. Fill it with the cotton. Used to fill the needles with the cotton.
Like threading it, you mean?
Threading it. We called it filling needles for them to. Sweeping up the place. And in those days, they had a big sieve thing. Well, we used to sieve the dirt off the floor to get the cotton, because they sold the cotton over again to somebody that could use it.
This was the cotton waste?
Off the floor. I started with 4 girls the same day, my age group, and then 2 were sent to one side of the factory to learn like the trimming and herring side of it, and I went on to the seam net side. Now that's 2 different nets. Herring side, very, very fine twine. Seam net, a bit heavier. Took maybe 5 or 6 girls to work up a herring net, and they were massive. Seam net side, 4 girls would work a net. The basic of a seam net then was what we called the first sheet, a second sheet, a could end or a tail end, as they say now. It had 4 wings, 2 top wings, 2 lower wings, and a square that we called a square, right, which the fishermen call a cover. Now, if you can imagine it, you get 2 to match in with your square, these are called the top, 2 to match to your first sheet, these are the bottom, and including your top wing and square and your full bottom wing, it went in mesh for mesh. You'll not understand that, but that's every square mate, completely even from top to bottom, and you had to be even, or the whole thing was taken out. The netting was made up in the weaving department. They called it, they clothed the machine. Now, when we, in the finishing, wanted 10 nets, the lady that was my boss was a Miss Gordon. Now, she could count that out and know exactly how much netting we needed to fulfil that order. And that was put in paper and it was sent to the weaving department. Now, to clothe their weaving, it was tubes of cotton and different big prawns, you know, spikes. Now, these were all put on at different points, and then they just set their lever up and it just clicked and clicked, and that was how they wove the nets. We got that after it came off there. It went from there to the examining. When it went to the examining, it was like massive blackboards. You know a blackboard? A school blackboard. Like that, and great big long sheets, and they put the white net across it. And then 2 girls pulled it across any meshes or cotton that got intertwined. They clipped it, remended it, kept pulling it over till they got all the mains or any bad twine that was in it. Then it went back the opposite way, another 2 to the other side. They mended all that. Then it was weighed off and brought down to the finishing. And we started that with that whole bale of netting. You'd have a bale for the wings, you'd have a bale for the first sheets. First and second sheet was practically the same netting. And then your tail end, that was smaller again. Then the first job I learnt was how to work the wings. They used to work with 2 bobbins, one heavy and one light, and we called it rows. And we had to put a row, like a selvage, down the side of each wing.
Selvage, what?
Well, that's outside. That's a selvage, right? Well, we worked a row, a loop. Now that loop was for the men mounting it onto the ropes. All these loops, that went onto the ropes. Now that was when I first started, right? When we went through that, I learned how to cut, how to taper. That's going from 90 to 20.
Did it take a while to learn?
It took me a wee while. But I was interested. Very interested. But it was a place, if you made a mistake, you suffered for it.
Were they quite strict then about
Very,
quality?
very strict. Very strict. And very, very hard worked. The war years came, we did all the camouflage nets and cotton for the army. There were one time when a big camouflage net came back, I think it was Africa. We used to bring all the nets back and remend them. And in the same old finishing. Now then, I'm talking about 40, 50 girls working when I first went in. And they'd opened a bale and there were a cat, mad, was spitting all over the place. Had came right across in the boat in that bale and it was mad. It had the place in an uproar. So we did the camouflage nets for the war and we worked 12 hours then. We worked until 7 at night, 7:30 at night.
The area nearest Station Road, and that's on the corner, Inverness Road, that's where the offices were, big doors that led into the engineering department, and then the electrical department was nearby. As you go up Inverness Road on the left, again to my knowledge, was the Musselburgh strip. That was where the rolls of metal varying from 6 inches to 3 feet in width on big rolls that were dropped off. They were doing whatever they needed to do to stretch it and to make it into small stuff.
It would be fed through the rolls just by the guys grabbing the steel with tongs and whipping it over their heads and pushing it through the next set of rolls. Quite a marvellous thing to see, because it was quite alarming and quite special to see them flipping this red hot, yellow hot stuff over their heads and swinging it round and such like. But then the kind of 2 metre long billet or whatever would end up being maybe 100 metres long in the finished pass.
So the strip mill was where you spent most of his working time there?
Yeah. In the mill, when you used to go down the lane which the block's tenements, and his machine, his rolls, was right down in the far corner next to what is now the bus station. In the yard, which was to the right of that, that's where all the steel used to lie, and then if they were needing it, they would put it into the cleaning shed, and then ultimately it would go into wherever it was. So the steel would be lying in rolls in the yard, go into the cleaning shed to get through the acid baths, and then they would come in and roll it. They rolled metal, as far as I'm aware. They did a lot for Rolls Royce, they did a lot for a company up in Dundee, washing machine people, things like that.
I started off doing a few kind of wee projects. I ended up doing an acid consumption review at Musselburgh Strip. Musselburgh Strip was the second or third biggest department out of 7. Musselburgh Strip used to pickle steel in an acid bath, and the tank of acid would be monitored and checked for its validity in terms of ongoing pickling. Anyway, I started working with the chemists. The chief chemist was Morrison Hewitt in the laboratory building. Anyway, I established that we were emptying the tank typically far too soon and managed to cut down the usage of acid by maybe 50% or something.
Further down, I think, was the aero department. They did, I think it was wires for aircraft, cabling for, obviously, perhaps that time, manual stuff rather than electronic. Everything was manually operated. And then way at the very, very, very top, Inverness Road, where Tesco's is now, and their car park was the ropery department, and that was where they, I think, stretched and made, twined the wire. You know, it was hundreds of yards long, this shed. It was long, and it had to be, you know,
to make the ropes.
If they need the cables for the Forth Road Bridge, you know, that type of cabling, you see how big they are, and that was the type of length that they required.
Yeah, well, the ropery, there was a lot of the small rope machines makers where there were women working, and the big machines for the big ropes and whatnot, was usually the men that worked them.
Women worked in the ropery, which was a god-awful, hellish environment, on the finer strands and the finer ropes. So we used to, at the ropery, do the biggest rope I think I remember seeing was 6-stranded, 86mm diameter, down to aircraft cables, which would be down to about a 16th of an inch. And the women tended to look after the finer side there, for example, because of, I think, manual dexterity, and also because they were dealing with probably weights of pieces that they could physically manage. Elsewhere, they worked at Gilby Brunton's in the wet wire drawing, because again, it was ultra fine stuff. I mean, like I said to you, there was wire thinner than the hair on your head, and the women had the touch that the men couldn't ever get to. So that they did a lot of that wire drawing down in Gilby Brunton's. Very, very fine stuff. That was typically electrical resistance alloys. So that was the period when the very fine wires were being put into resistors and whatever other kind of fine electronic parts were being made as further processing. The women definitely worked in the music shop. That was to draw very fine wire by the dry method. That was carbon steel type wire, so high tensile wire. So very fine by comparison to the heavy stuff that went on in the wire mill. This was a sort of separate adjunct wire drawing department, which was called the music wire shop.
The ropery, it was the dirtiest place going, just because I think they needed the grease that it was like everywhere. You know, you could hardly walk.
You were obviously in that environment. Was it smelly? Was it?
It was
noisy.
It was noisy. It was hot. It was dusty. It was loud. It was traditionally the kind of stuff that you see when you look at the Victorian legacy type industries, in as much as it was very Victorian, very archaic.
How many folk were there, do you think? Hundreds or?
Employed by Bruntons? Yes. There's got to have been hundreds. Yeah, because it was a big area.
And I think in Mall Park Strip, there would have been, I'm going to say maybe 100, 150 people. Okay. So quite a big department. The other big departments were the wire mill and the ropery, the steel wire ropes works. They were the three big businesses. The rest of the businesses were Gilby Brunton's, the shapes department, the alloys department, the tool steel department, the music wire department, Mall Park Aero, who did the turbine blading and aircraft fittings and such like, and the ropery.
Musselburgh was quite an industrial place.
Oh yeah, you know, I mean, the three factories was virtually the town, you know what I mean? And my dad worked in the wire mill, and my aunt and my mum for a very short period of time worked in the net mill.
Did he ever say anything about the noise or the smell of the place? Or how dangerous it felt?
Oh well, it developed industrial deafness.
Did it?
Oh yeah,
Right.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think that goes part and parcel with the job in these days. You know, I mean, nowadays we don't have ear defenders on. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was his life. You know, he worked in one place and that was it. He got injured twice in the strip roll. The steel rolled over his legs, and he was off a couple of times. But he didn't get any compensation or anything like that. As soon as he could manage to get back, he was back.
I don't think there was such a thing as health and safety.
There was 2 women going down to the canteen. It was an overhead crane that men had been working on, but left it to go and get their lunch.
Right.
And these 2 women walked underneath it and it fell on them. And what a mess. And we all thought, they're going to die. The 2 of them were going to die. But they lived, I don't know, I think it was shocking. And other things, I mean, you used to get paper cuts and they would say, spit in it.
Spit in it.
Spit in it, it'll be fine.
Were there many accidents in your time?
There was accident. I mean, there was accidents. There wasn't any bad accident.
Yeah.
But people kept losing fingers.
On the looms, or yeah.
I wouldn't say it was as any dangerous than any other place. You go on by the times and what have you.
And I used to take my dad's dinner up in a red spotted handkerchief as dinner. The mother used to give us 2 plates. And he used to take his dinner up to the winders.
Was that when you were at school? During your lunch hour from school, you used to do that?
Yes, it would be when I was at school. Because my sister was... used to take my sister up sometimes and hurl her in the wee buggy. And when my dad worked in the Bruntons during the First World War, he was where did the wires for the planes.
Oh, yes. And then
I was able to take my dad's piece up there, and that was nobody was allowed in because it was secret, but the time desk was so high the timekeeper never saw me passing. And I used to walk right in, and they used to lift me up in the model plane they had in the middle of the floor. The men used to put me in the cockpit in the plane.
If he was working overtime, sometimes we'd ask to get a piece made up for him, and I would go down to the time office for it. Depending on what was happening, I'd get to walk down to the start of it, but I wouldn't be allowed to go all the way down to his machinery. You know what I mean? But yeah.
Did your dad use the canteen?
Oh, night shift. Because they used to work day shift, night shift, back shift.
Right.
You know,
Okay.
At one time they worked 3 shifts, and then eventually it was day shift, night shift. My dad loved the back shift.
Did he?
Yeah, because it allowed him to play golf in the morning.
Of course.
And by the time he came home at night, the kids were in bed sleeping. So,
quite a few folk have said, although there was a canteen there, they never used it.
Well, my dad used it. Yeah. In fact, we used to go there for Christmas parties.
Did you?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Was that quite a big do? Or?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was speaking to Nora, my sister, about it, and she says, yeah, there's quite a lot of kids used to go to it, you know, but one of these things has just died out. But certainly the Christmas parties in the canteen was always the thing to look forward to.
Did you get a gift from the company? Or
Santa.
Anything, Santa.
Did the mill itself organise any trips? Are we...
Just day trips to through the September weekend and that, maybe Dunfermline or...
So would they put on a bus? Or,
Aye.
And was that paid for or did...
No, we paid for it ourselves. The girls at the Sol, they organised it all.
Talking about outings and holidays and so on, apart from your New Year, did you have any other holidays in the year?
I had a week in August. It used to be unpaid and then we got it paid. One of these days in August, Mr. Stewart hired a train and took all the workers away for the day. We used to go to Stirling. We were at Stirling once, Falkirk, but it was always the places. So the last thing they had was a sail in the boat, and that was a great day. They just went up the Forth, up to the bridge, round the boat, and what a rare day they had. And John sure paid for that, but you bought all your own food and everything.
What were you doing on the boat then? Was it just like for the sake of getting out and...
Aye, they had a sing-song and everything on it. It was a big boat. Had a rare day. Bar and everything. Mm-hmm.
Did they have work dances or anything like that?
Oh, aye, they had dances. Aye, we had.
Was it quite a sociable place?
It was really nice. All the girls all met and we all used to go to the dancing.
Get the rollers in and now you're dancing.
So was Saturday a good day then?
Friday was better. Friday was a late night.
Oh really?
Aye.
Right.
And my dad would get us up.
Right.
And he would say, oh my God, you want to see the state of the two. The mascara was down to here, the hair was all back combed, and we were in some state going into that mill. They had, before I started, and it was through the back, they had a big lorry with a swan on it.
Right.
And all the paper mill girls had been in the swan and that was for a parade.
And this big float was there for ages with this big swan on it.
Right.
That they had made.
And that's something that the company did?
Well, it would be the workers, it would probably.
The workers would do.
It would be the workers.
Mall Avenue.
Uh-huh.
They used to drop us off there, and when you come down at 5 o'clock, all the buses were waiting to go to Walliford, Whitecraig, Trinent. So you jumped on your bus and you were away down the road. But in the morning, it was like a sea of heads. Hundreds of people walking.
So were these special buses laid on just for the workers?
Yeah, the mill buses.
And I says to him, our life was kind of geared to the Hooters. I mean, that told you when they were starting, and when we were playing football up the Hawk, the Hooter rang, and we knew that was time to go back for your lunch, you know. And then it was the same at night time when the Hooter blew at 5 o'clock. That was the time to come back for your tea, you know. So the Hooter could be heard virtually all over the town.
A lot of really, really nice people, good characters, and you know, it was a decent enough place, nice people.
I loved the paper mill.
Yes, it was. I did enjoy the mill. I really settled well into the dispatch. You know, I really enjoyed it.
Well, I quite enjoyed it while I was there. As I say, when I got married, I says I won't be coming back. So that was it.
How do you feel about your time in the mill, looking back on it now that you've just retired?
Well, I don't think I would have changed anything.
Yeah. Were you happy there?
Yes, I was. Aye.
And did you work at the overhauling right through your time? And did most folk do that then, if they got a
Most
job,
of the
they
girls
just
done
stayed?
it, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we all done it. Aye.
Yeah.
I quite liked it, aye.
And were you living at home through that 10-year period when you were working in the mill?